Carbohydrate Competencies, a resource to assess knowledge and skills important in diabetes management. Diabetes is a complex chronic condition which often requires significant lifestyle or behaviour changes to achieve good management. Over 5% of the Australian population is living with diabetes, with similar rates here locally in Albury-Wodonga. Good glycemic control is important to minimise the risk of diabetes-related complications and reduce the financial burden and poorer quality of life often associated with these complications. Education to help achieve good glycemic control often involves a multifaceted approach from an interdisciplinary team. Dietitians are an integral member of the care team, providing dietary information and strategies to assist the client in the day-to-day management of their diabetes. Whilst ideally clients would be referred to see a dietitian at diagnosis, not all clients engage in this care. They may not fully understand the information provided, or misconceptions may develop over time. These knowledge gaps will often impact the client's ability to effectively self-manage their diabetes. The dietitians of Albury-Wodonga Health identified 7 key areas specific to diabetes management that may require dietetic input. These areas are sources of carbohydrates, carb counting, label reading, analysing the amount of carbohydrate in a recipe, exercise and carbohydrates, insulin to carbohydrate ratios, and alcohol and carbohydrates. Previously, there have been limited resources that could be used to check a client's level of understanding of key information and skills used in diabetes management. The main resource that guided the development of these competencies, the PED-Carb quiz, was largely based on American foods, was visually quite plain, and also failed to address some of the key domains previously identified. Evidence from the Australian Literacy and Life Skills Survey suggests that around half of Australians have literacy and numeracy skills below the minimum standard required to meet the demands of everyday life, and 60% of Australians have health literacy below the minimum standard. With this in mind, the new competencies have been designed to engage a diverse range of the Australian population, including children and adults with lower literacy levels. Given that the visual layout, the complexity, and the tone of the written material are linked to how effective resources are, feedback was received from people living with diabetes to ensure that these competencies were appropriate for the target population. Adjustments have been made to improve the usability and relevance of these resources based on this feedback. The competencies are not designed as a test, but as a tool for the dietitian to gauge the client's current understanding within these 7 domains and identify any potential knowledge gaps or misconceptions that require further education. The dietitian will use their own clinical judgment to determine when and which competencies to use with the client, as some competencies may not be appropriate. Activities 1 and 3 may be useful for all persons with diabetes, whilst the other activities will likely only be relevant to those on an insulin regime. First impressions of the competencies are promising, with all participants engaging in the activities and reporting that they would be useful for people with diabetes. As the participants completed the activities during the consumer feedback sessions, gaps in their knowledge and understanding were identified, thus achieving the intended purpose of the competencies. It is anticipated that using these resources will assist to provide client-centred care through tailored education, and consequently, this will support the client to effectively manage their diabetes and improve outcomes.